Hi everybody, and welcome back. I hope you're super refreshed. Thank you to the previous presenters. Two really good sessions there. I'd now like to take the opportunity to introduce you to Tony Bird and Richard Hattersley from Hayes. Over to you guys, you can take control.
Thank you, Russell.
Thank you, Russell.
Greatly appreciated, and more so thanks to this group as well in terms of the opportunity to present to you today on the AI-ready operative, and particularly in reference to the recruitment process and procedures that exist. And I think for me also aligned to the skills shortages that I think a topic of everybody's conversation and have been for some time to come. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of our presentation, I just want to caveat a few things because I think it's important we set the scene. For me and Tony combined, and this is the bit that makes us feel really old, I've probably got over 55 years worth of recruitment experience between us. And across the course of those 55 years, we've probably been asked a wide variety of questions, covering a wide variety of topics. And I'd like to think that we've answered the vast majority of them correctly and efficiently. But when we were putting the presentation together, what became apparent to us is only probably the last 6 to 12 months have questions been raised around AI and AI in terms of the recruitment process and procedure. Undoubtedly for us, AI is part of the future and it will continually evolve and it will continually have an impact on recruitment and the recruitment sector. But it's as new to us as it is to everybody else. So today's presentation is not me and Tony coming out and saying that we are experts in AI, because we're far from that, But it certainly is our opportunity to present as Hayes our viewpoint on where AI is currently impacting on the recruitment sector, the recruitment market, and more so in the sectors that are specifically important and of core value and interest to Direct Works Group.
Thanks, Hats. Yeah, I think we were talking last week, we were saying we got 54 and a half years of recruitment experience without AI and 6 months experience of recruitment with AI at the start of the journey. So hopefully we're going to share some valuable insights with you today. So I'll kick us off. We thought we would start with an overview of AI in recruitment and where do things sit as of now on the 2nd of July 2025. So employers are exploring AI within their recruitment practices, sourcing and shortlisting to find suitable candidates that best suit roles, and then screening and scoring candidate competencies and skills. Candidates are using AI tools. So this is a really interesting area. There's two things candidates are using AI for within the recruitment process. One is to help essentially write and present CVs and covering letters and part of the application process. And the other one is to start to get advice and support on interview content and techniques. And we've got an exercise that we've done, which we'll share with you later, where we've actually asked AI for support when we're applying for a role as a maintenance operative within a housing association. And there's some quite interesting detail in there. There clearly are benefits to using AI tools within recruitment. Huge time efficiencies, professionalizing content. Hayes are currently exploring the opportunity to use a CV AI service, not for writing the CV, but for actually formatting CVs. So if you think of a scenario where we're shortlisting 5 candidates to send CVs to clients for a potential role, the time spent putting those CVs into a presentable format is large. We'd be better served using that time to speak to more of our clients and more of our candidates. So and I think David mentioned it earlier, from an administration point of view, there are a lot of real benefits to using AI tools within recruitment. There are clearly some pitfalls as well. So from a candidate point of view, there is a danger that they could be applying for more roles by using what we call a spray and pray approach, where they're saying to Copilot or to Chat GPT, write me an application for a job as an operative within a housing association, write me a CV for X, write me a CV for Y. And you may start seeing in your own recruitment teams more applications to roles because of this. And then from an employer point of view, back to the sourcing and shortlisting and the screening, only using AI tools at this stage could take unsuitable candidates too far into the process. So that's an overview of where we are now within AI. If we then look at the subject of upskilling operatives for AI integrated workflows, that there are things to consider here. And some of it was touched on earlier, actually, in David's presentation. So technology can create embarrassment and rejection. There are clearly additional responsibilities that can be created to support progression, such as you could create a tech lead role within the operative teams, to have a lead operative that would be able to support other operatives in terms of onboarding for technology. So if you look at the Avail app earlier and Helen, some of the key challenges we've got are making sure that all our operatives can get to the point that they can use the technology at hand comfortably, and that's a journey for some more than it is for others. So the additional responsibility that can be created by giving operatives specific responsibility and have that as part of their career progression. Again, a subtle approach to upskilling is better than the proverbial sledgehammer. So this feeds back to the gamification point earlier, really, and how can we make sure that we are rewarding operatives for improving their technology journey. And then the most important one would be seek out what we call the software mindset. So this is very much a will rather than a skill. So essentially, we are recruiting an operative, we are conducting an interview process. What we really need to understand from that operative is, and I'm sure we've all worked with these individuals in the past, that the sort of quote unquote, I don't do computers response. Oh, I'm paper only. I don't do computers. I don't do technology. Obviously, that's changing, but as this stuff kicks up further through and things get more advanced, it's making sure that you are recruiting people into the business that have a software mindset. So Derek, the operative, version 1.0 in terms of his technology, understanding and capabilities. It's going to be very different to Derek version 4.0 in 18 months' time if Derek's prepared to go on that journey and adopt rather than reject. So that's a really important part of the recruitment process. And then some suggestions along the way. Identify your most AI ready operatives today. Who are the tech savvy individuals that can support the rest of the team? Set out early in your recruitment process the need for a software mindset, and this is a will, not a skill. Remember that people often won't ask what they deem to be a daft question for fear of being judged. So when you're looking to upskill around the use of AI and the use of apps and the use of technology platforms within the repairs team, just always keep that in mind. Create additional responsibility / lead roles where some operatives can support other colleagues to upskill. And one thing that we thought was poignant, and this came up earlier actually, around how do you get tenants involved? Is there an opportunity for some operatives to support residents with minor tech issues? So a couple of housing associations have been exploring this sort of digital buddy concept where you've got tenants maybe of a certain generation that may struggle with technology more than others. You've got to be a little bit careful with this, because obviously when you get into the realms of banking apps and personal financial information, and you don't want people knowing other people's passwords, but is there an opportunity for operatives to be offering help to tenants to navigate your own council or housing association apps or website as part of their responsibility? Yeah, so that covers a number of things there around upskilling for AI integrated workflows. Richard's got to change tack slightly to talk about humanising the recruitment process.
Yeah. So ahead of today, I read an article yesterday that I thought was certainly worth sharing with this group, because obviously it's all to do with, as I said earlier on, the evolution of AI and how that develops. But yesterday I was reading an article where there's a federal lawsuit being brought in the US by a potential candidate who is querying a decision by a client to recruit someone on AI bias. Now, the reality of it is it's being pursued under what's called unethical practices. And that, for me, sort of sows the seed of humanization of the process is fundamentally important. If you're purely going to rely on AI, and let's be fair, the US is probably way in advance of the UK, and it's coming to a town near us sometime soon. The reality of it is we just need to be aware that we're taking into consideration absolutely everything. So for us, the interaction of candidates to consider. Tony, previous slide. So for us, the early interaction is key. So in terms of, and I think we've all been there before, I certainly have, where I've sat in front of a candidate and interestingly a person that we're looking to take onto the business, and the person that I'm interviewing is completely contrary to the A4 sheet of paper that is their CV that they presented to me in the first place. And I think that's fundamentally important, that interaction at a very early stage in the process is fundamentally important. Similarly, when you use external providers to help you with resourcing demands and needs that you have, it's important to establish, was that a face-to-face interview? Was that virtual? i.e., did the recruiter or did the external provider meet with the candidate that they are wanting to represent? Because fundamentally, it's important that the candidates that you are interviewing meet the demands and the requirements that you have as a business. And sometimes even a short MS Teams interview is better than just reviewing a sheet of A4 and a CV. And within that, and I think we're all acutely, you're more so than us, acutely aware that job history and roles are more than ever more important, and that is specific, that's practical, and that's relevant to the sector. So our suggestions as part of this process would be build early face-to-face engagement into your recruitment process. Yeah, even if it is on MS Teams. By default, doing that alone will save you an enormous amount of time when it comes to recruiting the right fit for purpose people. When you're advertising, state within your adverts that it will involve a first stage in-person interview. That will put people off, yeah. But my question would be, if it's putting the wrong people off, is it worthwhile factoring it into your adverts? Because we certainly believe that it is. Yeah. Remember that we're geared towards aesthetics in written applications. So shortlisting can and frequently will be harder. And the work history and duties, responsibilities could be inflated and appear very thorough. And Tony later on in the presentation is going to go through some worked examples where, and dare I say it, one of the world's worst tradesmen could be made out to be the world's best tradesman just purely by the use of AI and using AI to tailor a CV that a CV that is more pertinent to the need and makes them better than they are. And then further for that, dig further into each role, the day-to-day duties. So where did you do it? When did you do it? How did you do it? remember these candidates are your brand ambassadors. So sometimes the devil is very much in the detail. And I think that's fundamentally important. Next slide. So in terms of traits, things to consider, and I think things that have been around for a very long period of time, and something that are probably throughout the business and the sector already. A code of conduct and a suitability to work in occupied tenanted housing is the #1 skill that candidates have. We look at internally when we're recruiting. We always ask the question, would you put that candidate in your own house? And then ultimately, would you put that in your grandma and your grandfather's house? And I think that's fundamentally important. 100% AI can create answers to questions around this subject. So be cautious, be specific. You do need specific details, and candidates need to demonstrate their suitability to ensure they're fit for purpose against the need that you have. And as I said earlier on, it's how these answers are delivered. So suggested actions for us would be make sure you humanize the recruitment process early and look for how some questions are answered. AI is there to support but not replace interaction at a human and a basic level. Remember, we're always recruiting based on someone's suitability to enter someone's house. They uphold your reputation. They are your brand ambassadors. You should never lose sight of that, despite of what goes off in the wider world. And look to ask questions that the AI tool wouldn't and maybe couldn't provide the answers to. They're unique questions. They're sector specific. In a way, they're only questions that you would know the answers to.
Thanks, Hat. And I think we'll hopefully help with some of that later on when we looked at the worked example. So the next conversation is about considering your viewpoint of AI when recruiting, and try and be open-minded, because there is some skepticism within AI and recruitment, particularly around, you know, what's stopping a candidate polishing the best CV in the world in 15 seconds and firing it into the application process when they're not suitable. So it's always important to sort of have a balanced and constructive view with this. So someone ultimately is trying to give themselves the best opportunity of being hired. That is rarely a bad thing. Remember that AI could and will enhance and improve an application, but should never create one. Are candidates who reject the use of technology the best candidates to work as a maintenance operative in housing in 2025? No, because clearly, as we've seen from the presentations from David and Helen already, it's very much moved into that space that they need to be open to technology. So therefore, some of these candidates are going to be using AI to support their application process. But we need candidates that can optimize technology without solely relying on it. So just an interesting one for you. Some of you will already potentially be aware of this, but the universities are using software that gives the percentage use of AI within assignments and dissertations and presentations. So it will tell a course tutor what percentage of AI use has gone into that submission. Something similar for CVs and job applications really can't be that far away, can it? To be able to analyze a CV application and look at, how much is that AI generated versus how much has that person actually created that document using their own experience, knowledge, and input. So, sorry, I've clicked on there. I do apologise. Let's go back to it. We need candidates who can optimize tech without solely relying on it, and be careful not to completely be AI skeptic when recruiting. So if someone hadn't, go back 15 years, 10 years, 5 years even, if someone hadn't spell checked or proofed their covering letter / CV, we'd very often reject them. And as we all know, very often they might be applications that said in their profile, strong attention to detail. Well, you haven't, because there's spelling mistakes all over the application. But remember that the strength of a skilled trades candidate often isn't in their ability to write a CV. 2019, there's a strong potential that there was a plumber who didn't get shortlisted for interview due to CV quality or grammatical error within the application. And they could have gone on to being a superb candidate that was absolutely right for the organisation. So what we're going to find is AI will create a more level playing field when it comes to people's ability to present themselves. It then comes down to their suitability, as Richard said, to work in that environment and their core skill set and their qualifications. So remember that the strength of a skilled trades candidate isn't in their ability, always in their ability to write a CV. Ask AI what questions a maintenance operative is likely to be asked in an interview. And we've done that exercise and we'll share that with you shortly because it makes fascinating reading. And then always think, has this application been enhanced or been created? We don't want people applying for roles that are just creating an application and fabricating the content. But if a candidate has applied for a role and they've enhanced their application using AI to give themselves the best chance of getting the role, is that a bad thing? So positive use of AI within the recruitment applications, and we've covered some of this, but AI can enhance and improve an application, but should never create one. Trades candidates may have the right skills, but struggle to articulate this, and AI can help them and professionalize their content. We should be looking for candidates who can adopt AI and technology and not reject it. Formatting and structuring CVs well, this gives a candidate a suitable candidate a more level opportunity. And some of those candidates might have been rejected 5 years ago because they didn't. Richard mentioned earlier that aesthetics thing of people look with an application, how well laid out it is, how well formatted, how structured it is. Preparing a long-serving candidate with useful tips and techniques that improve their interview. So you will have some applicants that are applying that have been with another organisation for 10 or 15 years. They're nervous about interviewing. They're very rusty with that process. AI can help them with some of that. And then they might present themselves better at interview and maybe shortlisted or maybe offered the role. Whereas often Richard and I have had feedback and our teams have on candidates that seemed very nervous, sort of flunked the interview, didn't really give themselves the best shot, overcome with nerves, and consequently weren't shortlisted, even though we believe they were appropriate for the role. AI can actually help candidates with some of that, which is a positive, and allows candidates to better articulate their lived experiences within the roles they've done. So there is lots of positive to the use of AI within recruitment applications. So for a bit of fun / let's see what it came up with, we asked Copilot, could you provide me with possible questions I'd be asked for an interview that I'm attending? And Copilot said, absolutely. And he asked me to state and qualify 3 things: the role I was applying for, the company or type of company I was applying to, and whether it is a technical, behavioural or mixed interview. And I said, it's a maintenance operative role, it's within a housing association, and it is both competence and behavioural based interview. And then Copilot, as you can see there, ran me through a load of questions that could be asked, everything from, can you walk us through your experience with general maintenance tasks, plumbing, carpentry, electrical? How do you prioritise multiple repair requests in a single day? What tools and equipment are you most comfortable with? How are you with using apps for logging your activity? What steps do you take when you can't complete a repair on your own? And it then went into behavioural / competency-based questions. Tell me about a time you had to deal with a difficult tenant or resident. Describe a situation where you had to work under pressure. How do you manage your time when working independently? It then went on to ask other questions around judgment and decision making. What would you do if you arrived at a property and the tenant wasn't home? If you discovered a safety hazard while doing a routine repair, what would you do? So it would give a candidate what they perceive are the questions that you would ask them in the recruitment process. Why do you want to work with this housing association? What do you know about our organisation and the communities we serve? So you can see within 10 seconds, it's come up with a load of things there that a candidate believes they're going to be asked when going for an interview. We would recommend to do that exercise, and Richard will come on to that in a minute, because actually, while some of the questions in here are very pertinent, it'd be good for you to know what a candidate that is preparing for an interview is going to ask AI, so you can ask some of the questions that aren't in there and see what responses you get from that, which will help you to vet and screen candidates to a more thorough level. And then finally, recommendations, Rich. You're on mute. We've all done it.
Sorry about that, everybody.
It's all right.
Schoolboy error. As I said at the offset, AI is going to constantly evolve. There's no two ways about that. And fundamentally, if we present on this in 12 months, even 6 months' time, the presentation is going to be significantly different to the one we've presented on today. But I think it's important and fundamentally underpins the sector that you have to remain competent and humanize the recruitment process. It is very much an in-person exercise. So the relevance of the candidate that you're interviewing for a position has never been more important, and particularly with all the stuff that's going off in the sector at the moment, the suitability of the candidate when they knock at Acacia Avenue at 8 o'clock in the morning to go in and complete a repair. It's fundamentally important that they are the right person. They're the fit for purpose candidate. They're the brand ambassadors. Software is increasingly important, and just something to consider. There will be candidates or operatives within your current teams that want to improve and embrace technology. It's worth asking the team who within the team wants to upskill, who wants to be involved, because you might be slightly surprised, because we've done stuff internally within our business, and dare I say, people that I wouldn't have thought had put their hand up to be involved have put their hand up. So it's always worth sharing the vision, the plan, and asking the question. We need to embrace technology, and that is irrespective. And something that, as I said, Tony mentioned and one of the presenters mentioned earlier on, is whilst it is an upskilling opportunity for your current workforce, it is an upskilling opportunity in support of your tenants and challenges that they will be facing in terms of IT on a daily basis. And what better an ambassador could it be that's helping their tenants to manoeuvre the ever-changing world of technology? And aligned to that, consider your own viewpoint on AI. Yeah, what are your own perceptions? It is important to innovate, because this is going to continue. This is not going to go away, and it's absolutely important that you're not biased in terms of not using it because you don't think it's going to work, because it is here to stay, undoubtedly. And then just one anecdotal thing to leave with you: undertake the exercise yourself. As Tony mentioned, ask yourself, candidates will use AI, and candidates will, in preparation for interviews, will ask AI to provide them a long list of questions that they should be asking. And it's important on the flip side that you also know the answers to those potential questions, because from a competence point of view and from a reliability point of view, you need to know the answers that are coming down the road, and coming down the road sometimes soon. So I would encourage you, when you've got 10-15 minutes, to use Copilot or something similar and just ask questions around, or ask it to provide you a list of questions that some candidates will ask, because what was important before is not necessarily important to them now. And that's it.
Thank you, Hats. Yeah, that's us done. I can't see any questions.
Thanks, Tony, and thanks, Richard. As usual, your insight is welcomed. You always bring something to the table, so thank you for that. So interesting. We'd had a comment from Edward. He just said you'd be quite alarmed by the process that their recruiters follow. Then they don't usually even sign the operatives up to their agency until after we've seen them as the employer.
Mm.
Don't you want to make a comment on that or not?
Sorry, could you repeat that, Russell?
It basically said you'll be quite alarmed by the process that our recruiters follow. Then they don't usually even sign the operatives up to their agency until after we've seen them as the employer. Don't have to comment. It's...
I can't answer. I can't answer, Russell, but thank you.
No, that's fine. I think it's just a comment, to be fair, and you thought about that. Just interesting around, again, I can't see any of the questions, but personal use of AI, I think you're absolutely right. I think I'm not going to deny I've used it on my own CV, but I've asked AI to, not to make something up, but obviously to build it on some experiences that, rather than going through and writing it myself, I've asked it to add it in and add the words, and I think it's improved certain bits of it, and it's told me weaknesses and strengths. But you do need to put the actual information in. You're absolutely right, Richard.
Yeah.
I think what it's also useful for is definitely matching your CV against a specific role and identifying strengths and weaknesses. I think that's, and I've done that for some people, because we all fancy a job now and then, don't we? And actually seeing if you're actually going to get through helps. So and the other one I quite like as well is that when I've promoted people lately, I've helped it to create a personal development plan, an improvement plan, and that's been really insightful as well. And it's developed that quite quickly in terms of the key areas that you can recognise in terms of weaknesses or strengths, and it does help on that front. But sorry, I just wanted to put my own input on that. But
thank you.
I think the thing for me, Russell, that's interesting is in the last slide we talked about your own viewpoint and then the software mindset. And I've had examples recently where a line manager knows full well that he or she's got to embrace technology and develop technology, and it's important that they do that within the team. And they've made an assumption that it is a set demographic and a set age group that would be interested. Yeah. And then before they know where they are, and I don't want to be ageist here, but someone who they discounted has come and knocked on the door and said, why aren't you considering me? Because I want to be part of it. Yeah. And I want to be part of this journey. And I think sometimes people's perceptions actually limit and restrict the full potential. Yeah. And when they've given the go ahead and got the older person involved, shall we say, if I'm allowed to say that, got the person involved, they've been an absolute breath of fresh air. Yeah. So we shouldn't be judgmental and assume automatically that because it's a new technology is the new way forward, that it's only going to apply to a set demographic.
No, I totally agree with that. I think you're absolutely right.
I think just on Edward's point, having sort of processed that, Russell, and thought about it, I suppose today we're presenting on the AI ready operative, aren't we? And we all know that when we've got an operative that's going to enter someone's home, the amount of check-in and vetting and the sort of physical interaction that you need before you put someone into the recruitment process, from our point of view, they could have been working on a Barratt Homes site, and there's nothing wrong with Barratt Homes, but they're not applicable for that soft, the soft skills, the bedside manner, the empathy, the presentation. If you were recruiting for a head of procurement, there is plenty of examples where that would have been a virtual interview rather than a physical interview. So there are nuances, but the reality is, if you're recruiting in an unphysical way for operatives, it's going to go wrong quite quickly, and ultimately they're driving your van wearing your polo shirt, representing your brand when they drop off for a newspaper and a pint of milk on the way home. So
cheers, thanks for that. Right, okay, thanks ever so much, Tony, and Richard. Again, I always welcome your presentations. You always bring that insight, so thank you very much. And I'll now hand over to Matt Jarrett and our Procure Plus colleagues. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Thank you.